Flams are a great tool to use in your everyday drumming, but I find a lot of the tutorials out there are very strict on the rules and don't tell you how to break those rules artistically. So today we're going to look at both sides of this. We're going to look at the fundamentals of flams if you've never played flams before, what the grip is, what the technique is, but then also how to break away from those strict rules and use flams in a real world environment. Let's start with grip. If these are your very first flams, I definitely recommend playing matched grip. And in fact, be very mindful of how your thumbs are. You don't want to have one thumb in and one thumb up. Make sure they're perfectly aligned. And in fact, I would recommend thumbs in for beginner flams. As you grow, as you get used to flams, you can change your grip up later on. A beginner stroke with flams will use two different heights for the sticks. You can see that I'm raising my right stick up higher than my left. Now, the motion of these are mostly in sync. They both go up and down together. The only difference is that since the right stick is moving up higher, it has to move slightly faster so that it's almost keeping up with the left. Now, that lower hand, or the left hand in this case, that's going to hit the drum first. Over time, as you get more experience, you won't need such a dramatic difference in height between the two sticks, but as a beginner, that big dramatic difference will help as an initial crutch. When you first start, don't worry about the difference in timing between the two hits. Just start to go through that motion and get comfortable with it. And over time, try to start to close the gap between the two hits. Up to this point, we've been working on right flams. That's where the right hand lands second and the right hand goes up higher. As you can see from this notation, that technically means that the right hand lands on the beat and the left hand is landing just before the beat. Here's how that sounds against a metronome. Do be sure to work on this a lot against the click. 60 beats per minute is a very good starting point. Over time, try to build that up to 150 beats per minute. Once you have that really solid, then start working on your left hand flams. It's going to be the same approach as before. Begin by getting comfortable, raising your left hand up higher during that motion, then start to close the gap between how much space there is between those two hits. Then start practicing to a click at 60 beats per minute and speed that up to 150. The next step will be with alternating the flams. So that's where you're going to do a right followed by a left. And this adds some more complexity because now you have to remember to switch the height between the two, but also make sure the correct hand is landing on the beat. Again, start at 60 beats per minute, speed that up to 150. Okay, the next step is to start to work this into some drum beats. I'm going to play a very simple exercise here. The flam that you see is going to be a left flam or left hand flam. And I'm doing it that way so that the left hand, the snare hit, is consistently on the beat. Up to this point, I've only shown flams on the snare drum. And while you could move the flam around your toms, you're not actually locked into doing a flam on just one drum at a time. You could spread your flam across two toms or between your snare and one of your toms. Now, this is where you're going to have an artistic decision to make because depending on whether you do a right flam or a left flam, you're going to get a slightly different sound. So if you're writing a part and you're writing flams across two different drums, try both and really pay attention to how the sound differs between the two, and then make a decision as to which one you want. Here's an example that I really like that I've seen the drummer Gavin Harrison use a lot. I'll play these again as left-hand flams. These flams are used as part of a fill, like this. And working that into a beat sounds like this. Here's another rule that I want you to break. Technically, flams should be played with the hits very close together, but you could make an artistic decision to deliberately increase the space between them. Here's a perfect example of where you may want a bigger gap between those two strokes in the flam. Imagine I'm playing the end of a song and there's this big slowdown at the end, what's known as a retard. In this case, you'll notice that as I make the beat slower, I increase the space between the two flam hits. Another artistic decision to make is the timing of the flam. Up to this point, I've always said that your primary stroke should land on the beat and the other stroke should land just before it. But there's nothing stopping you from delaying that and having your primary stroke land just after the beat. Have you ever heard people talking about where you want to play just behind the drum beat? Well, this is a perfect opportunity to play a flam that lands later. Besides flams, another technique you should really explore is side sticking or rim clicks. And you can find a really easy crash course on rim clicks right over here or in the description below. Until next time, peace.